monarchy will be shifting in a slightly different direction.
I think it's safe to say that change is...
The monarchy had survived abdications, betrayals, wars, and scandals. But nothing prepared the royal family for the declaration Prince William was about to make. With King Charles absent from the chamber and senior courtiers watching in stunned silence, the future king placed his hand upon a sealed document and announced that Prince George would immediately be recognized as the Crown Prince of Britain. In one sentence, childhood ended and a new royal era began. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William entered Windsor Castle with a red leather folder, carrying the pressure of a kingdom, unsure who was in control. Charles had temporarily withdrawn from major constitutional duties, meaning the formal responsibilities linked to leading the monarchy. His absence created a dangerous silence. The prince knew hesitation would let others shape the future before he could protect it. The folder contained a royal succession framework, a formal plan explaining how the crown would preserve authority during uncertainty. William had approved it after a closed discussion with constitutional advisors. He opened the document and declared that George would carry the designation Crown Prince of Britain. The title did not change his legal place. It marked him as the protected future of the monarchy. No applause followed. Only the silence of people who understood history had shifted. George heard his name and stopped breathing. William set down his pen, looked toward his son, and asked him to step forward. The boy froze beside Catherine before slowly crossing the chamber. She watched him move and felt the last hope of an ordinary adolescence disappear. Pride stood beside grief. George tried to remain steady, yet his hands tightened when his father placed a ceremonial insignia before him, a badge representing his role. Camilla had received no advance copy. She read the restrictions beneath the announcement and discovered that royal spouses would hold reduced authority during a succession emergency. Her face changed because the clause did more than protect George. It blocked any spouse from shaping the direct line through private influence. Charles had not signed the final page. Instead, William's authority came from a sealed directive the king had prepared months earlier, a private order created for a crisis he never expected so soon. As the chamber emptied, Camilla approached one advisor and demanded to know who had authorized the title. His Majesty prepared the path, he answered. The prince chose the moment. She did not move. But the declaration was not merely about succession, it was about a father placing the weight of a kingdom upon the shoulders of his own child. Behind the grand language, the ancient seals, and the controlled expressions, stood a boy who had not asked for history to arrive so early. Prince George understood that he would one day inherit extraordinary responsibility. Until that morning, however, one day had always felt distant. Now his father had spoken the future aloud before the most powerful figures in the monarchy, and every person in the room had looked at George as though childhood had already become a memory. George had spent years learning about constitutional history, military tradition, and public duty, but those lessons had always been kept separate from normal family life. Constitutional history meant understanding how the monarch, government, and laws worked together. William had insisted on that separation because he knew what happened when a child grew up beneath the weight of a future already chosen for him. The quiet after the declaration followed George into a private sitting room. He reached toward his jacket, removed the ceremonial insignia, and placed it carefully on the table. The small badge represented his new public role, but in that moment it looked unbearably heavy. "Does this mean everything changes now?" he asked. William looked at his son and felt every easy answer disappear. The prince could have promised that nothing would change, but he knew that would be a lie. Public appearances would increase. Lessons would become more serious. Every gesture would carry meaning. "Some things will change," he said slowly, "but home will still be home. Here, you are still George." Catherine entered before the boy could respond. She saw the insignia resting between father and son and stopped. The princess did not challenge the declaration. She did not raise her voice. Yet her silence carried the fear she had hidden since George stepped forward inside the chamber. William recognized that fear immediately. He also knew she had just learned something painful. He had approved the timing before discussing the final decision with her. The future king had believed secrecy was necessary because palace resistance was already forming. But Catherine saw something else, a decision about their child made without her full consent. George broke the silence. "Grandfather spoke to me weeks ago. he admitted. Charles had taken him aside after a private family lunch. The king had spoken without advisors and told him, "Courage is not wanting the crown. Courage is carrying it when others need you." William stared at his son. Catherine moved closer. George then confessed the truth beneath his calm expression. He was not most frightened by the title. He was frightened of disappointing them. Catherine reached for his hand, but her eyes remained fixed on William. "Why could this not wait?" she asked. The prince answered quietly, "Because someone was already trying to decide George's future for us." To understand why William acted with such speed, the family would have to confront the private incident that transformed caution into emergency. The emergency declaration did not begin inside the Grand Chamber at Windsor. It began 12 nights earlier, behind a closed library door, when a routine review of ceremonial duties exposed a proposal no one expected to find. Buried inside a private briefing was a plan that would have delayed George's formal royal preparation, expanded the influence of senior royal spouses, and placed critical succession decisions under a temporary palace council. William read the document twice. Then he demanded to know who had written it. A palace committee had been examining how the monarchy would function if Charles became temporarily unable to perform the full range of his duties. The group's stated purpose was continuity, meaning a clear plan for keeping royal responsibilities operating during a crisis. Yet one draft went much further. It proposed moving control of George's public preparation away from William and Catherine and placing it under a broader household council. Camilla brought that draft to a private Windsor dinner 12 nights before the announcement. The document was titled, "Continuity of the Crown During Temporary Sovereign Withdrawal," a formal plan for managing royal authority while the monarch stepped back. She placed it before Charles and urged him to approve it before William saw the complete language. The library door opened before the king could answer. William had returned to deliver a file. Then he noticed George's name on the exposed page. "Give it to me," the prince said. Charles placed one hand over the document and hesitated. That brief pause told his son more than any explanation could. The future king repeated the request, and the monarch finally released the pages. William read in silence. His anger deepened with every line, because decisions about his child had been discussed without either parent present. Charles insisted the review was designed to protect the institution. The prince answered that protection built on secrecy was not protection at all. Camilla refused to retreat. She told William that emotion could not be allowed to control succession planning. The queen consort argued that the crown required discipline, distance, and shared authority. George was not an institutional asset, William replied. His son would not be assigned by committee. The final clause changed everything. It allowed Camilla to chair the Continuity Council, a temporary decision-making body that would operate during Charles's absence. That position would give her influence over George's schedule, advisors, and ceremonial appearances. Charles then revealed the truth. He had not approved the proposal. Instead, the king had prepared a separate sealed directive, giving William emergency authority to define George's role whenever internal interference threatened the direct succession. The prince folded the disputed draft and placed it before Camilla. "No council will decide my child's destiny," he said. When the family assembled again, the argument would no longer remain hidden behind legal language, and William would force every loyalty into the open. There were no cameras inside the king's private council room, but the exchange that followed would reshape every relationship around the throne. Camilla arrived expecting a procedural discussion. William arrived carrying the rejected continuity proposal. Catherine sat beside him, calm but visibly guarded, while Charles occupied the head of the table in exhausted silence. Then the prince pushed the document across the polished surface and asked the queen consort one question. "Why was my son's future discussed without us?" Charles spoke first. He insisted that no final decision had been made and that the meeting could still end without further damage. The king wanted control, but the room had already moved beyond procedure. A private council room was a secure chamber where senior royals could discuss sensitive decisions without public interruption. That protection now made the silence feel more dangerous, not less. William slid the proposal toward Camilla and asked her to read the clause concerning George. The queen consort looked down but refused. Her refusal lasted only seconds, yet it exposed the fear beneath her confidence. Catherine reached for the document. The princess read the passage slowly. It granted Camilla influence over George's education, advisors, and ceremonial schedule during a royal emergency. Then she reached the sentence describing parental consultation as advisory rather than binding. Her voice changed. Catherine closed the file. "Motherhood is not advisory," she said. Camilla argued that the monarchy could not depend upon the emotions of one household. She warned that William and Catherine were becoming too independent, too protected, and too powerful within the royal structure. The queen consort then revealed how the plan had gained support. Several senior courtiers believed the Wales household was building authority faster than the crown could control it. William rose from his chair. "George is my son before he is anyone's sovereign," the prince replied. "No committee will treat him as an instrument." Charles watched the confrontation deepen and finally admitted his part. The monarch had allowed the proposal to be explored because he feared a sudden decline in his health could leave the crown unprepared. He had imagined confusion, competing instructions, and a family fighting for control while the country waited for certainty. The king removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "My greatest fear is not losing authority," Charles confessed. "It is leaving all of you to fight over what remains." William did not soften, but he understood the pain behind those words. He placed another possibility before his father: activate the sealed directive, secure George's status publicly, and remove every chance for private reinterpretation. Camilla stared at the prince. Catherine remained beside him. Charles looked toward the locked dispatch box across the room. The confrontation had exposed the conflict, but the power to transform William's proposal into royal reality still rested inside a document the king had written in secret. For months, King Charles had kept one document locked inside a private dispatch box. It was not an abdication, nor was it a conventional regency order. It was a safeguard, a directive designed for the moment when uncertainty inside the royal household became more dangerous than pressure outside it. Now, with his family divided and George's future caught inside a struggle for control, the king ordered the box opened and placed his final reserve of authority into William's hands. Charles had written the directive after realizing that a succession crisis might not arrive through one dramatic event. It could grow slowly through illness, household rivalry, or conflicting claims over royal power. A dispatch box was a secure case used to hold the monarch's most sensitive papers. Inside this one rested a plan created to protect the direct line when private conflict threatened public stability. William stood across from his father as a senior private secretary unlocked the case. The official withdrew without speaking. The king removed the document himself, but he did not pass it over immediately. For several seconds, he held the pages as though they contained the ending of his own reign. Charles finally placed the directive on the desk. "If we activate this," he told his son, "my influence will be reduced. The public will understand that the monarchy is preparing for a future beyond me." William heard the pain beneath the calm words. The prince had demanded certainty, yet certainty now required his father to acknowledge an approaching loss of control. He asked whether the monarch truly accepted what the declaration would signal. "I do not accept it easily," Charles replied. "I accept it because delay has become more dangerous." William almost stepped back. The future king imagined postponing the announcement, allowing the family more time and protecting his father from public speculation. Then he remembered George's name written inside Camilla's proposal, surrounded by clauses that treated his childhood as a source of authority. His hesitation vanished. The directive granted William temporary power to protect the direct line of succession, meaning the immediate chain of family members expected to inherit the crown. One hidden provision went further. It allowed him to create a protective designation for the next generation, provided that the legal order itself remained unchanged. That provision made the title possible. Crown Prince of Britain would not replace George's existing position or alter who inherited first. It would be a ceremonial status, a public mark of his future role, designed to shield him from competing councils and private palace structures. Charles signed the authorization. Then the king made one final decision. He would not attend the declaration. William would stand alone when the consequences began. Once the sealed authority became public, every person who had relied upon uncertainty would discover that the balance of power had permanently shifted. The declaration lasted only minutes. Its consequences began before William left the chamber. Telephones rang across royal residences. Briefing papers were withdrawn, and courtiers who had supported the Continuity Council suddenly demanded clarification. Yet the most painful reaction unfolded away from the machinery of the palace. Behind a closed door, Camilla removed her official brooch, placed it beside the abandoned proposal, and realized that the new order had been designed partly to restrain her. William's decision dissolved the Continuity Council before it could begin. That proposed body would have allowed a small group of senior figures to guide royal decisions during Charles's temporary withdrawal. Now George's education, advisors, and ceremonial preparation would remain firmly under the control of his parents. The change mattered because it closed every hidden route through which another household might influence the direct succession. Senior officials received immediate orders to rewrite future plans. No royal spouse, committee, or secondary family branch could interfere with George's development without the approval of William and Catherine. The future king had not simply announced a title. He had built a wall around his son. Camilla returned to her private rooms and dismissed her aides. She read the declaration alone, moving slowly through each restriction until she reached the clause limiting the authority of royal spouses. The queen consort set down the paper, removed the brooch Charles had given her after the coronation, and placed it beside the rejected proposal. "This is not protection," she told the king when he entered. "It is humiliation." Charles refused to soften the truth. He told his wife that the original proposal had crossed a boundary, and that George could never become the battlefield upon which adult fears were settled. The monarch understood her anger, but he would not reverse William's decision. Camilla then discovered how quickly support could disappear. Courtiers who had encouraged the continuity plan now denied involvement through private written statements sent to the royal household. The queen consort had carried their argument into the open, yet they abandoned her the moment power moved elsewhere. Catherine faced another wound. She learned that George's first appearance under the new title had already been scheduled, despite her request for privacy. The princess confronted William, but their conversation stopped when the boy overheard staff discussing his historic role. "Will people be angry with me?" George asked. Catherine knelt beside him and held his hands. She told her son that none of the conflict was his fault. He had not caused the division. He had only been placed at its center. That evening, William entered George's room without aids, documents, or ceremony. The monarchy had announced its future to the world. Now a father had to explain that future honestly to the child expected to carry it. For the first time since the crisis began, there were no courtiers waiting outside, no constitutional advisors measuring every sentence, and no ceremonial document between them. William sat beside George in the quiet of his room and removed the insignia from its presentation case. The prince did not speak as the future king addressing Britain's newly designated crown prince. He spoke as a father who understood what it meant to inherit a destiny before understanding the world that came with it. William had chosen privacy because he remembered how royal duty had once been explained to him through rules, schedules, and institutions, rather than emotional honesty. A constitutional advisor was someone who guided the royal family on how the monarchy should operate within the law. George had spent the day listening to adults describe him as the answer to a crisis he barely understood, and his father knew those words could become a prison. The prince placed the insignia in George's hand. It was a ceremonial symbol, meaning it represented duty without changing the legal order of succession. William closed the boy's fingers around it. "This belongs to you," he said. "You do not belong to it." George looked down, then asked the question his father had feared. "Did you give me the title because grandfather is dying?" William felt the force of those words. He answered carefully, telling his son that Charles remained present and that no final goodbye had been spoken. The king was still guiding the family, but the monarchy had to prepare for every possible future. George nodded. Yet another fear followed. He worried the title would separate him from Charlotte and Louis. He imagined being treated differently at home, protected more closely, and pulled away from the brother and sister who knew him without ceremony. William refused to let that fear grow. "No title will make you more loved," the prince promised, "and no duty will make them less important." George listened as his father finally confessed why the declaration had happened so quickly. Adults inside the palace had started treating the boy's future as a source of influence. Competing factions wanted control over his advisors, appearances, and preparation. William had acted because he would not allow his son to become a prize in someone else's struggle. George then revealed what Charles had told him during their private conversation weeks earlier. Grandfather said crowns become dangerous when families stop speaking honestly. The words silenced William. The king had been preparing his grandson emotionally long before anyone knew the crisis would break. George accepted the title on one condition. "You have to keep telling me the truth," he said, "even when it is frightening." William agreed. The next morning, George would stand beside his father before the public, not as a frightened child pushed forward, but as a son who had chosen to trust him. That private promise changed the meaning of the declaration. But beyond the palace gates, Britain was already deciding what the new title meant for the crown. By sunrise, the words "Crown Prince of Britain" had crossed every newspaper desk, television studio, and royal household in the country. Some saw the declaration as reassurance. Others called it a dramatic acceleration of succession. Yet the debate changed when George appeared beside William at Windsor, wearing no crown and delivering no speech. He simply stood close to his father, looked toward the waiting crowd, and raised one nervous hand. The response transformed anxiety into something far more powerful. Broadcasters interrupted regular programs to explain what the title actually meant. The designation did not alter George's legal place in the succession, which was the formal order deciding who would inherit the crown. Instead, it gave him a new public identity as the protected face of the monarchy's future. That mattered because Charles's withdrawal had created uncertainty, and uncertainty had already allowed private factions to compete for influence. Constitutional commentators described William's decision as a strike against ambiguity. They argued that the prince had drawn a clear line around the next generation before palace rivalry could shape it. The future king had not changed the law. He had changed the balance of power. The London Herald captured the mood with one full-width photograph of George standing beside his father. Beneath it appeared the headline, "The boy who now carries Britain's tomorrow." Crowds gathered outside Windsor Castle before midday. George remained close to William, his expression controlled but uncertain. Then the boy lifted one nervous hand. An elderly woman behind the barrier began singing the national anthem. One voice became 10. 10 became hundreds. Catherine watched from an upper window and felt pride collide with grief. The princess saw her son hold himself steady, yet she also understood that the public would never look at him as an ordinary child again. George had succeeded in the moment, but success had taken something from him. Camilla watched the same broadcast alone. The queen consort had spent hours viewing the declaration as a political defeat. Then she saw the hesitation in George's face and recognized the human cost hidden beneath her own humiliation. Her anger did not disappear, but it weakened. The palace then released a photograph showing Charles reviewing the final declaration. The image proved that William had not seized authority against his father's wishes. The king followed it with a written message describing George as a symbol of continuity, and publicly closed every path toward reversing the title. Camilla made one final request before the family meeting. She wanted to speak directly to George without advisors, without documents, and without defending the proposal that had caused the crisis. The public had accepted the new crown prince, but the family could not move forward until the wound behind his title was finally confronted. The final meeting contained none of the ceremony that had defined the declaration. George entered with William and Catherine, while Charles waited beside Camilla, near the same table where the disputed proposal had once been opened. No documents remained upon it. No advisors stood nearby. The crisis that had threatened to turn a child into an instrument of palace power would end through words spoken face to face, and through one decision that made clear what the monarchy had finally learned from its most painful divisions. Charles had gathered them privately, because the constitutional dispute was already settled, but the emotional damage remained. Succession planning meant preparing for who would inherit the crown and how royal authority would pass safely between generations. The king now declared that whenever a minor was involved, both parents must be included, and the child's welfare must carry as much weight as the needs of the institution. Camilla moved toward George but stopped before reaching him. The queen consort removed a small royal pin from her jacket and placed it on the table instead of offering it to him. She told the boy that no adult should ever use his future to increase their own authority. Her apology did not defend the proposal. It finally admitted the harm. George listened without anger. He did not excuse what had happened, but his answer cut deeper than any accusation. "I just want everyone to stop fighting." Catherine heard the exhaustion beneath those words. The princess told Camilla that trust would not return immediately, because trust broken around a child could not be repaired through one conversation. Yet she accepted the apology as the first honest step toward rebuilding what ambition had damaged. William then faced his father and revealed the purpose behind the emergency declaration. The prince had never intended to accelerate Charles's departure or celebrate his own rise. He had acted to create an unbreakable boundary around George, ensuring that no committee, spouse, or palace faction could control the boy through uncertainty. Charles accepted that truth. The king confirmed that the designation Crown Prince of Britain would remain, not as a weapon against Camilla or a warning to the wider family, but as a promise of protected preparation and transparent succession. The monarch turned toward George. "Do you understand what the title means?" he asked. The boy answered without hesitation. It meant serving people while remembering who he was. Charles smiled. "That is the only definition that matters." William's declaration changed the monarchy because it rejected the belief that heirs must silently surrender childhood to survive. George emerged not as an object controlled by powerful adults, but as a future sovereign protected by a family that had finally placed humanity before ambition. There would be other burdens, but this conflict was finished. George remained the Crown Prince of Britain. William remained his protector. Charles accepted the approaching future, and the crown endured because the child beneath it was never forgotten. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.